Hi there and welcome everybody to the Wednesday warm-up on This Is Ibrox. Today I'm joined by a couple of guests as always. Very jealous of Ross because he got to go to the game last night. How are you today, Ross?
I'm all good, Kyle. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here again and talk about Rangers.
That's it. And Reiss, I think you were there last night as well, were you?
No, I was working. I was supposed to be at it, but couldn't get the shift swapped, so I caught the second half though, to be fair.
That's fair. You're a bit like myself. I was working, so couldn't make the game, but managed to catch most of it. But as always, there's loads to talk about today. Obviously, Rangers played Newcastle in their first pre-season friendly. We'll get into that. I know it's the caveat of it's a pre-season friendly, and you can't dig into it too deeply, but we are all Rangers supporters, and that's what we do. So we'll give it a bash. Discuss a lot of individual performances, some good, some bad. We'll discuss the B team and the academy graduates that come on. I want to discuss get Ross's thoughts in particular about this, about the move from the Broomloan Collective and the Union Bears down to the front, the Copeland front. We also have the guys yesterday managed to catch Beale's press conference. I know the lights went out at Ibrox, Ross, so I'll give you your soapbox to get on and wax lyrical about Nico Raskin at some point in the podcast, because I know you were disappointed not to get that opportunity yesterday. And we'll go on to talk about some of the injury updates that Michael Beale has provided us, and we'll maybe look a wee bit ahead at the Hamburg game at the weekend. But first of all, we'll begin with an On This Day, as always. And on this day, Reiss, I'll start with you. It's weird because you were talking about this recently as well in terms of this St Joseph's, but in 2019, Rangers played St Joseph's of Gibraltar away in the second leg of the first qualification round of the Europa League. Rangers ran out 6-0 winners with an Alfie hat-trick, a Defoe double and an Aribo goal. Do you have any memories of that game in particular, or just these I don't know, pumping random teams that you've never heard of before in like the first round of these Europa League? I love these games because it was the summer and you got to watch Rangers, playing well against somebody. Start with your mates. Well, what's your memories of this game?
It's a bit like when we played that German team the other day and you've never heard of them in your life, but you're going, well, we beat them, or we played someone. But I remember the full Gibraltar, now St Joseph's team, coming into my work in like these full Joma tracksuits, like the full club gear with their like wee man bags and all that, their toiletries, almost as if they were going to Ibrox, and just kind of being like, who is that? And then reading one of the badges and it was them. I was like, we're playing them tomorrow, what are they doing in here? But they were like, it honestly looked like a Sunday league team just kind of rocking up at Ibrox, but I well and truly got rid of them and then moved on to bigger and better things. And I think it was one of the performances that kind of established a bit of, right, we're not messing about in Europe under Gerrard.
That was it, exactly. As I said, I absolutely loved these games because it was just a chance. Rangers were back before virtually every other team in the whole of Scotland playing a competitive game, and said I always just remember it being sunny whenever these early stage European qualifiers are on. So, some more positive than others, but at least that was a 10-0 aggregate win overall. And Ross, the next on this day for you is in 2011. Rangers played a friendly against Blackpool. I must say it's not a particular friendly that stood out or one that I could remember from a way back when, but it was a game that Stephen Davis scored both goals for Rangers not long after penning a 5-year deal at Ibrox. As I said to you before we came live, and not to destroy any of the behind-the-scenes magic for any of the viewers or listeners out there, but I've basically just brought this up just so we can talk about Stephen Davis, who is still at the club.
Well, yeah, I think it's funny you've let everyone know about that now, because my memory is shocking, right? So I've had a wee Google there of that game, that 2-0 game, and I've had a wee look at the lineups, and it's really interesting to see some of the players. Guys like Ortiz were playing that day, Kurt Broadfoot. So yeah, really, really interesting lineup. And I read a bit of the article there and said that Rangers dominated the game, so that's what we like to hear. But yeah, I think there was also the narrative that Barry Ferguson was close to joining Blackpool at that point, and he was in the stands and things like that. So that it's quite cool looking back at these things now. Stephen Davis, loved Stephen Davis in his first spell, loved him. And I think what I always say about Stephen Davis and shows how good a player he is, his first spell to his second spell in terms of the type of player he was is completely different. You know, I remember under Watersmith, a very attacking-minded midfielder. I think he played off the right quite a lot as well.
Yeah.
And that ability to burst into the box and get goals. His second spell was so different. You know, he came in as that kind of modern style number 6, sat in front of the back 4. And I think when he came back in that second spell, the first few games, it was like, oh, I'm not sure about this. You know, he doesn't really look up to it anymore. And then as time went on, you just seen how good a player Stephen Davis has been over his career. And it's why he's played at such a high level outside the Rangers, you know, and with Southampton and taking them to a record finish in the Premier League. So, yeah, listen, great player for Rangers, Stephen Davis. I would absolutely love, probably is a bit controversial because I think we want this squad to move on, but I would absolutely love to see him come back from injury this season and maybe just sign a short-term deal and just help us out this season if it comes to the later part. That's controversial, I know. I just think the way it ended for Stephen Davis, I feel sorry for him. So I'd love to see him in the Rangers shirt again and, you know, get very much like Allan McGregor last night, get the praise and recognition he deserves. But yeah, Kel, overall, great player, Stephen Davis for Rangers.
That's it. Paul McGarrigle here says Davis is a true professional. I actually think he was better the second time round. Rolls Royce of a player. It's really hard to disagree with that one. I think it's well known on this that Stephen Davis is one of my, if not my all-time favourite Rangers player. Just absolutely love the guy, and I will bring up every Wednesday if there's an on this day and it's about Stephen Davis. You can guarantee it's getting brought up. And Caroline's mentioned it here as well. I love Stephen Davis' overhead kick goal against them, and that was on my birthday, which made it even better. Arguably the best birthday present I've ever had in my life.
You putting a Stephen Davis above Barry Ferguson, Kyle?
Yes. We're going to see it.
Yeah.
I think so.
Interesting.
And listen, I've just brought an absolute expletive of storm of comments towards me there, but it's a podcast that's all about opinions, and for me, listen, we're not going to get into that. Let's talk about another Rangers legend, but Reiss, I'll come to you first on this last night. Obviously, it was a sellout at Ibrox for Allan McGregor's testimonial. It was such a fantastic fitting occasion. Talk to me about the occasion. Talk to me a bit about Allan McGregor as well, and because I think you're certainly in the same bracket as us. Well, for me, he's really the only Rangers goalkeeper that I've known, and again, it's another debate. You know, Gorham, McGregor, but for me, McGregor is the Rangers goalkeeper. It was a fitting tribute last night, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was brilliant. Just for the sake of transparency with viewers, I was born at the start of the millennium, so he honestly is probably the only keeper I've ever known. Maybe reaching the end of Stefan Kloss's career, but other than that, growing up, certainly for following Rangers, it's just always been Allan McGregor. Fortunate enough to meet him once, and he's just such a quiet guy. I was desperate for a speech off him last night. I'm watching it going, right, lap of honour, right, come into the middle, where are you going? Don't get in that tunnel, where are you going?
Yeah.
And he's just such a humble guy, but I think there's a bit of a narrative about him. Like, when you see him on the park, I would honestly go and watch Allan McGregor play for some Sunday League team, because I would just be watching him. He's constantly always in the ref's ear, always on somebody's back. I'm surprised Borna Barisic hasn't accused him of bullying him or something. Every time he'll purposely come to the edge of his box just to point and scream at Borna. Does it with everybody. He's brilliant. But I think behind the scenes, as you've seen with some of the videos that Rangers posted during the week, a great guy, gets on with everybody, knows everybody, and it's one of the ones, a bit like Ross says, you want him to be there, you just want him to stick around, but obviously footballing wise and ability wise, he's probably not at the level we need now, but you just kind of wish he could be a coach or something, or somebody just to be there to shout at people.
Yeah, that's it. I think for what it's worth, I think that's if he does go on to do anything, it will be within a coaching role, and God help whoever the poor young goalkeepers are that will be taken under his tutelage if he does decide to go into that. But listen, Reiss touched on it there. It was a fantastic atmosphere for a legend. It's a word I don't like using, but for Allan McGregor, he is a legend of the club. Something a bit different, Ross. You and I were at the the fans forum where James Bisgrove announced that they were going to be trialling this new thing within the stadium. You know, it's a discussion that's been going on. The Union Bears, the singing section of the within the stadium wanted somewhere a bit more central where they could be a bit more vocal. Yesterday was the first time we saw that. The Union Bears Broomloan Collective have been shifted to the Copeland front. They had that fantastic tifo of Allan McGregor before the game. I think we've all seen that picture. It's such a good picture. I don't know how enamoured he is by it, but yeah. Did you feel that helped yesterday? Do you think it made a difference? Do you think? And the other question I've got with that is do you think having the 8,000 supporters of Newcastle made a difference as well?
Well, it's certainly a move I'd like to see the club take in some capacity. Where in the stadium they move them to, whether it's Broomloan, Copeland, I'm not sure, but it's something you see in most, kind of top European sides. They have a singing section in their stadium, and it's to try and really facilitate the atmosphere, and it's something I'd like to see. I'll be honest with you, where I sat last night in the gantry, I was very, very close to the Newcastle fans, and there was 8,000 of them, and they were very, very loud, right? And that's credit to the Newcastle United fans. They really brought a great travelling support up, which is fantastic for Allan McGregor. I think he showed his appreciation at the end of the game by clapping them and things like that. And a lot of the Newcastle United fans stayed behind as well to clap Allan McGregor, which is a nice touch. Don't have to do that. So my understanding of it, or what I really felt last night, probably I'm not in the best position to say. I could definitely feel the kind of the vibrancy from that end, but I'm just not sure I'm the best person to gauge it because Newcastle were so loud last night. But it's certainly something I want to see the club continue with. I wouldn't like the club to, try it this one game, and Newcastle United fans have been so great in the stadium that they think, oh, it's not really made the difference, so we'll just move them back. No, I think this is something they need to keep going with, really try and experiment with this. Ultimately, if it creates a better atmosphere in the stadium for Rangers, it really does help the players. I talk about this all the time. The players talk about it after every big game, European nights, Old Firms. They always talk about how much of a difference the atmosphere makes for them. And I think sometimes we all turn up at Ibrox with that kind of expectation of winning the game. And sometimes you can feel the atmosphere is maybe a wee bit flatter than usual. So I'd love to be able to, as fans, we all come together and we really try and create that atmosphere as much as possible to really, really help these players. If a move like that last night can do that, then I'm absolutely all for it. And I'd like to see the club continue to definitely experiment with this, especially through pre-season, definitely.
Yes, it's dead interesting. I said you bring that up there. I've had, I don't know if people know on here, but I have links to Newcastle through my family, and there's a couple of people that are my family that are Newcastle season ticket holders, and I like Newcastle as a club, and it was really impressive to see them travelling up in their numbers, and as you said, stay behind and show the respect to Allan McGregor. But I've had the feedback that it was quite good in terms of having, our vocal support directly opposing them, and it was a bit of back and forth at times, and that did generate an atmosphere. And they said that the atmosphere was brilliant. But we wish Ibrox is like that all the time. But it's not often you're going to get an Allan McGregor testimonial every week. But yeah, as you said there, from the opposition fans, all the feedback I've heard is that no trouble, everybody mixing within everybody and having a good time. But yeah, it'll be really interesting to see where I think they're planning on moving them slightly the next time. I'm not sure where exactly to, but it'll be fascinating. That'll be the Hamburg game, so I'm sure we'll report back to you and see if that has made any difference here. But let's talk about some of the football, Reiss. Yesterday, we'll get to some of the individual performances anyway. As I said, I'll put a massive caveat in here. As pre-season, we won't get carried away, because last year, when we played West Ham with Rabbi Matondo, I thought we were going to be winning the Champions League with that guy and his performance in that game. But the player that I want to talk about first is Abdullah Sima. I was quite impressed by him. He started off centrally, Reiss. I wasn't actually expecting that, just by all accounts, in terms of having seen him play for Slavia and all the scouting reports and that we've read and seen, and all the discussions that we've had on this Is Ibrox. I thought he'd be out wide, but he seemed to be spearheading that attack last night. What did you make of Abdullah Sima's first appearance in a Rangers jersey yesterday?
Yeah, he looked good. I was surprised to see him up front as well, actually. I thought possibly he would be on the wing, but by all accounts, he played well. he kind of linked play up better with those around him and just kind of brought others into the game. But there is part of me that hopes that it's not just he scored that header in a friendly and Beale's going, oh, stick him. Why? He's a striker. He scores goals. But I think Sima will be a great player this season. I think there is a lot of potential in him. We all talk about the likes of Brighton and hold them up to the highest echelons. And, well, I don't even know if that's a phrase. I might have butchered that there. But we hold them in the highest regard. But
yeah.
And then we get a player on loan for Brighton. And it's, he's obviously failed down there. And could just be David Weir on the phone. And he said, you know what, he's not quite ready for us. Take him on loan for a year and see how he does. So there's been a lot made out of loan signings and that, but if he comes in, wins us the league and then moves on, I'll be quite happy. And he certainly looked like he's got quite a bit about him last night.
Yeah, that's it. It's I agree with you. He looked physical, and I don't think he'll have any problem coming up against some of the, what we say, the jobbers in the league. Ross, I'll ask you the exact same question. I was quite impressed by the amount of running that he did, and he seemed to be, chasing balls down and was quite physical. How did you feel Abdullah Sima played yesterday?
Yeah, I think I may have said this in the podcast last night. I get caught up a wee bit in it last night watching Abdullah Sima. I was sitting next to Craig and I just said, I just think this boy's going to absolutely smash it up here, because technically he looks really good. But physically, it looks like he can match anyone. He was really up for it last night as well. He was throwing himself in there. I think there was one point where him and Tonali came together. Yeah. It's quite funny looking at Sandro Tonali, because I've always felt he's quite a small player when I've watched him in the Champions League and things like that. But he was massive. Yeah. So it's always really interesting seeing Premier League sides. You think they're smaller than they are. Like even Miguel Almiron last night, I expected him to be tiny. He's pretty big. So he was really in about it last night. I thought that was a really good sign, because obviously that is the way the SPFL defenders are going to try and deal with Abdullah Sima. They're going to try and be really physical. Mm-hmm. And if he can match that, I really back him to beat him with the technical side, his speed, and he just has that stature to be able to play on the last line for us. I'm not sure he plays as a number 9 for us in the season. I think you've seen it last night, the way we started anyway. It was actually a 2 behind the number 9. So Sima played up front and it was Lammers and Cantwell behind. I think he might drop one back. And I think Cantwell will then drop one back, and you'll see like a Dessers or a Danilo coming up front. So he might not play that role again, but he definitely has the skill set to be an outlet for us. You noticed that a lot last night. Early on in the game, Rangers were trying to go long. They were trying to feed him in behind. They were trying to make him run second balls, things like that. There's two sides of that. Rangers are being pressed aggressively by Newcastle, and that's the only way out they have. But there's also the side of you have someone up there that can compete physically and he can drag you up the park. And I think as Rangers fans, we always enjoy that part of it, because we've had Alfredo Morelos for 4, 5, 6 years, and that was his game completely. It was all about physicality, and it was all about battling whoever he was up against. So if we have another kind of striker or a forward player that's going to be like that, I think we're instantly going to take to them. And I think we've seen that last night with Abdullah Sima. So I think he's going to be great for us, honestly. And I know that I always read this phrase online, don't fall in love with a lone player. Well, I'm struggling at the moment, because he definitely looked someone that you could definitely pin your hopes on this season. That probably sounds a wee bit premature. It's one game, right? But there's he's not the only player last night you're looking at, and you can see small signs of why the club have brought them in. And I think that's really good to see that early, because like I always say, it gives you something to buy into. It builds confidence, and that's good for the fans and it's good for the club.
Yeah, and that's that exactly. I mean, I agree with you there in terms of, I think he will probably drop one back, and that's maybe something we'll come on to later on in terms of the formation. And I know that we kind of joked about it a couple of weeks ago, Reiss, in terms of the two wide 10s, so to speak, but I think that's very much what we got yesterday. But somebody who I think will be partnering Sima in those wide 10s, and I'll stick with you here, Ross, was Big Sam Lammers. He was playing out wide initially in that first half. Again, he was one, he got shifted to a bit more of a central role, but he had quite a few good touches, he had quite a few good passes, and it's a lot of what we've seen in training. We've heard a lot of people talk about his technique, and he's one of the more technical players at the club, but he was another one that I was very impressed with yesterday.
Yeah, a lot of early signs in the game from Sam Lammers, like kind of flicks around the corners and things like that, and he was looking to play really quickly in transition. I think that's a good sign as well. What impressed me about Sam Lammers was very good both sides. And I think that's something we've been looking for on that right-hand side. We've been crying out for a player that could fill that kind of, I was going to use that half space term there, but I can imagine people going, oh God, don't talk like that. Anyway, that right-hand side of the park, we've always needed someone, I think, in there. And I think we've got someone now that can go either way. And that's a really good resource for us, I think. So again, getting a goal as well, just to start, really good. We all know the question marks around Sam Lammers when he was brought in for the fee, especially the fee brought in. It was very much, this boy doesn't score goals. Well, getting a goal last night, I know it's only a pre-season friendly. It's a tough opposition in Newcastle, good players throughout the squad. That'll give him confidence. And it's really good to see. But yeah, overall, Kyle, I'm really impressed by Sam Lammers as well. I've seen a lot of the training clips. He looks really tidy. And it didn't surprise me that he started the game last night. I think this is definitely one of the guys that Michael Beale's going to rely on this season. He went from very early. He was linked very early when the transfer window opened. So I think we're going to have to get used to seeing Sam Lammers line up for Rangers in most games. And I think it's a positive for us because he definitely looks technically probably another level up from what we've had. I mean, if you compare him to the likes of Fashion Sakala, it's night and day. Of course, Fashion Sakala has other strengths. I'm not saying he's a bad footballer, but you can see the difference there. And I think that's what Michael Beale's going for. He wants that front three to be very dynamic, very technical ability to, you know, the fluidity between them, should I say, to be really strong. And I think Sam Lammers is really going to suit that.
Yeah, that's it. Again, it's hard to disagree with a lot of what you've said there because he does look like a big, solid technical player who's really good with the ball at his feet and direct. And as you said, that is something we've been crying out for a long time, is somebody who's competent on that right-hand side. Let's talk about his goal, Reiss. It's something that I feel Rangers have been working on for a wee while here. I feel like we saw a wee bit of it, you know, towards the sort of tail end of GVB, and certainly when Beale came back. It's this pressing when the opposition defence have the ball. I thought that we capitalised really well on it. It was only when I think Ross and I were discussing the thumbnail image for tonight, and I actually realised it was Guimaraes that he put on his arse, which is no mean feat. So, what do you think about his goal, how he got it, and then it was a very composed finish?
Yeah, he done well finishing it, just going through one-on-one, putting the ball in the back of the net. It's one of those ones, if you were to look at a freeze frame of it, you would expect them to score, but so many don't. And we've certainly seen quite a few of it. But I think the pressing is probably a slight tweak that Beale's definitely brought in. Mm-hmm. And it just makes sense because last year we all heard about Celtic, this and that, you know, their pressing so intense, this other thing. But like how good they start, we actually had more, like, we had better pressing numbers. It's just that the shots we were getting from them weren't leading to goals. We had more presses ending in shots, but we didn't have more presses ending in goals. And if Lammers can be that slight difference and that upgrade for last year, that turns when we win the ball high up the park, the high turnovers into shots, into goals, we'll be far better off for it.
That's it. I said it's somebody that I feel like we did get a few goals like that last season. That Tillman one in the Champions League in particular, where he was pressing and he nicked the ball and he flicked it in for Antonio Cholak. But yeah, it's something that hopefully we will see a bit more in our game, and especially if we're not playing traditional wingers, we've got to be using that going through the middle to create some of those chances as well. The next player, Reiss, and I'll stick with you in this one. A lot of negativity, as I said at the start of the podcast. There'll be some good, some bad, and it's I want to talk about Borna Barisic here in particular. He was getting quite a lot of negative comments yesterday. Obviously, there's been a wee bit of noise around him, linking him with a move to Nottingham Forest. How, again, I don't know if that's just lazy journalism because the previous director of football that he worked under, Ross Wilson, is down there as well. But I mean, what did you make of his performance last night? And do you think he was playing like a guy that's got a future at Rangers?
Yeah, I don't think there was much noteworthy about his performance. I actually missed the start of that, Kyle. Who was it that's linked to Forest?
Barisic.
Barisic? Oh, that's not even a rumour I'd seen. I'd seen he was linked away, but it's certainly not Forest. Wilson could just be an admirer of him. Played very well for the majority of the time period Ross Wilson was up here. And it wouldn't surprise me that he's gone down there. I see they've already implemented My Forest as a sort of like B-Tech version of My Gels. Yeah. So it could just be that Wilson's going down and going, look at what I can bring, and just copy and paste and stuff. If he wants to take the likes of Scott Wright and stuff for highly inflated fees rather than a 500 grand move to Turkey, then I'm all for it. But I noticed this at the end of last season. The last home game of last season, when you had Morelos and Kent and I think McGregor and that all going over to the Union Bears, almost getting their send-off in the last competitive game they played.
Yeah.
Barisic got one as well. Barisic was going over and like applauding them and that, and like waving. He didn't get emotional from what I could tell for the other side of the pitch, but he certainly went over, got his songs done and stuff like that. But that kind of concerned me, because as much as Ridvan's looked promising, there's just something about him. I don't think he's got that power. I think he's got all the intent in the world, but whether it be whipping balls into the box, whether it's physical power, it just seems to be a bit lacking there.
Yeah, there is something as well. I think it was just even further heightened when Yilmaz came on and he had a couple of good chances forward, and even though he's about half the size of Borna Barisic, he was still getting stuck in and about it a wee bit more than I felt that he was. But Ross, so before we go on, and I'll ask you individually on a couple more players, but how do you think that Barisic played last night?
I thought he really struggled in the first half. I don't know if that's necessarily just down to Borna Barisic as a footballer. I think there was a couple of things. I think Newcastle started the game really, really well, which I found quite interesting, because I think leading into the game, we were hearing that they were maybe a week behind in preparation.
Yeah.
But wow, they came out aggressive, like really up for it. Of course, they played a really strong team. So maybe I shouldn't have been surprised by that, but they were really high up the park, and they were looking, when they got into the final third, they were looking to play on their right-hand side quite a lot. And, you know, Barisic is in that area. And every time he got possession, they were just on him straight away. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily because they're targeting him or anything. It's maybe just that's their style and they're going to press you aggressively. And he just struggled. And I think the majority of the time, Barisic wants to move the ball onto his left foot to make the clearance or to play it down the line. And you could listen, you're playing against high-level opposition here. They're not going to let you turn onto your favourite foot if they can prevent it. And I think he just really struggled. And he get caught at least 2 or 3 times in that opening 20-25 minutes. Yeah. I think he ends up giving the ball away for the goal. I know the play moves on quite a bit, but I think it's him that gets, you know, pickpocketed in that area of the park. So I thought he really struggled, to be honest. And I know it's only a pre-season friendly, but I can understand the fans maybe not feeling the best about Barisic after watching them last night. I think there is this growing kind of frustration with the left-back position at Rangers, that we have someone like Ridvan sitting there. And you've seen at the end of last season that he had a pretty good run in the side, and I think people just want to see more of that. So Borna Barisic playing, he can't really win. This is why I feel sorry for him sometimes. I think I've said this before. If Borna Barisic plays well, it's always like, oh, well, you know, he'll no turn up in the next game, and then if he doesn't play well, he gets absolutely hammered. So I think he's at that stage of his Rangers career that it's going to be very, very difficult for him to change the perception. And I think that comes for us all, and it applies to us all. He maybe wasn't as bad as I think he was last night, but I think just the overall perception of Borna Barisic just doesn't help him. So if he ends up losing the ball in situations where he shouldn't, he just gets hammered more than anyone else, and that's really unfortunate for him. So yeah, look, he could have done a lot better in that first half. I'm going to not hold it against him too much. Yeah. First game of pre-season, you're also up against Premier League opposition, and you're talking about a top 4 Premier League opposition. So these guys are so well drilled when it comes to pressing. You look at Rangers pressing last night, we're like, oh, that's pretty good in that second half. Watch Newcastle in that first half against us. it was a bit of a canter. Let's be honest. They were popping the ball about. They were stretching Rangers. If they lost possession, they were on them straight away in packs. That's what we need to try and strive for. And I think that was a really good test for everyone last night involved with Rangers. And I think it shows Barisic that he has another level to get to if he aspires to play in the Premier League. We've seen these links with Nottingham Forest. He's going to find it tough if he moves down to Nottingham Forest to get to that level. So, yeah, it's an interesting one with Born. I do feel sorry for him sometimes, Kill, but I think it is what it is at this stage.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where I wouldn't be too fussed, I think, if he left. I've been saying it for a wee while now. If we can get any sort of money in for him and keep going on with this player trading model, and he just the way he was playing last night, it just struck me as a guy that didn't really, I don't want to say didn't want to be there, but I just got that impression of him, and as you said, it's really difficult to shake off that. He's been given that, not a coward, but he's been found wanting in a couple of high profile games, and once you've got that tag, it's almost impossible to shift it off. But Reiss, the next player I want to come on and talk about, and I'm dead keen on getting your thoughts on this guy, because I know there was a bit of chat in the group chat yesterday about it, and but it was Jack Butland. Obviously, he came on in 37 minutes for Allan McGregor, who got a rapturous applause. And I'm just going to ask you, what did you make of his performance yesterday, Reiss?
See, I don't think he done anything particularly bad. It's one of those performances that goalkeepers get very few moments in a game to make any sort of contribution to it. But I just thought, like, for so much being made out of, we need a goalkeeper in and we need somebody good with the ball at his feet, and distribution is really important, comfortable on the ball. I think there was genuinely one pass I seen Jack Butland land that second half. The rest of the time it was like, I seen him deliberately like beat his chest a few times and then just launch a ball to Abdallah, who had to drop 5 yards to come and try and meet the header and hope it fell to one of the 10s. And there was one where he chipped a ball to Hadji, and Hadji had a few decent turns and played a wee 1-2, got us out of a tight space. But I don't know. I need a bit of convincing with Butland. I think the header, there's a lot being made of the header, that it was a cracking header and stuff, but it's not one that's like rebounded straight at him for 5 yards. He's kind of had time to see it in the air. Whether or not he thought it's going over the bar or something is another matter. But I don't know. I've always had my... I've got questions over the mental aspect of it. I spoke quite a lot about the psychological demands of playing for Stoke. And I remember watching it thinking, you think that's hard? Right, we're in for a treat here. But saying that, watch him go and be incredible. He could be League's Player of the Year this season. He's one of the guys. He's definitely got all the ability in the world. And as Ross caveated earlier, it's one game. So I'll wait and develop a bigger sample size of him before passing any judgment. But it was the passing last night. I just thought, I don't know if McCrory's maybe better on the ball.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's, you know, it was after you'd sort of said it, and again, I've watched bits and bobs of the game back today, and I agree with you. He was hitting it just into areas rather than to players, if you know what I mean. And often, again, I suppose we do need to take into consideration the fact that we were playing Newcastle. It was a pre-season friendly. They were very quick, very sharp. Their reading of the game was excellent, by the way. It was first class at times, so I don't know if that was maybe just taken into it as well. But in terms of the goal, it's difficult as well. It's early. Looking back at it, if he'd have been a yard further forward, maybe could have, you know, put the boy off that headed it. If he'd have been a couple of yards further back, could he maybe got it? I don't know. It was a very good finish.
I think it's a great head. I think it's a great header. Honestly, I think it's a great header. I think it's always fair to look at both sides of a goal, right? You can always say that the defense can do better, and that's totally fair. I just think that one was a really, really good header. Like from my angle, it's looked right over, And when I was in the ground last night, I actually haven't watched the highlights back, so maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but it just looked a really good finish. It looks like he looped the ball over Jack Butland really, really well. So we might be being a bit harsh, but maybe I need to go watch it back, and then I'll come back and tell Reiss was right. So maybe that's what I need to do.
You know, Ross, there's been a few people say that as well, so I'd more lean towards the fact that you're probably right. But I don't know. I think just for that interview, I've had something in the back of my head that's kind of about this wee niggling doubt, so I'm going to overanalyze stuff. But it probably in all truth was a great header. But yeah, we'll wait and see.
Yeah, as I said, I don't think something like that will happen again, but well, we'll find out. Look, Reiss, I'll stick with you in terms of this. The next player I want to talk about is Kieran Dowell. He was a third debutant that was playing yesterday. I felt he was maybe a wee bit frustrated at times in his performance, but weird seeing somebody else wearing the number 20, especially a midfielder. But he kept at it. You can clearly see what he's in the team to do, playing a bit deep, and I quite like the fact that he was leaving bodies left, right, and centre, albeit a pre-season friendly, and showing little respect to the opposition. How do you think Dowell played yesterday?
From the slight bits I've seen of the first half yesterday, I think he's very technically gifted, but he's Scouse, so he's got that bit of toughness about him. He's got a bit of grit and determination that I always love players who play with that. That's my ball, give me my ball attitude. Like, give me the ball back, I want that ball, give me it. And it seemed he was doing that last night at kind of merciless level. I am just taking a few bodies. There was guys saying in the chat that they reckon it was Eddie Howe that subbed Kieran Dowell rather than Michael Beale. Just out of fears for his squad season. And I think it kind of set the tone for the rest of the match, because even into the second half, I was watching it and you were getting Raskin and Guimaraes having quite a bit of twos and throws. They were leaving one on each other, and that Cantwell wiped out Anthony Gordon. So I think Dowell just kind of set the tone of, this might be a pre-season friendly, but I've been at this level before. I need to get back to it and show that. I think it comes back to that phrase Gerrard said quite a lot, where he said we want to compete, but we've got to earn the right to compete. And I think that was just Gerrard's way of saying, we're going to make this a battle and get into the game that way. Yeah,
that's it. I said that he's a great addition to the squad. I think as the season goes on, I think he'll be one that grows into it. But as you said, he was never shucked away from any challenges. I still think he's maybe just gets sharp by a wee half yard, and I think he'll be a very, very good player in there in competition for your Jacks, your Lundstroms, and the next player, Ross, which I'll tee you up for. I asked earlier on was who was the player that impressed everybody most, and there's one name repeatedly that everybody's saying. Paul McGarrigle here says it's Raskin. He could be massive this season. Goals BG says this is Ibrox, Raskin. Yfeko stood out by far. Caroline as well here says Raskin the best player for me. No wonder he gets called the Pitbull. So he came on and he was very impressive. He was buzzing about, as Reiss alluded to there. And again, I think this, apart from the goal, might have been one of my favourite moments of the match yesterday. It's a pre-season friendly. It's a bit of a late challenge. He puts Guimaraes on his backside and he doesn't even look at him. There's no apology, nothing. He just gets on with the game. And I love players like that. But you missed out on the opportunity yesterday, Ross. On you go. Tell us about how you felt about Nico Raskin.
Well, it's funny because this is the first point of the season I get to say Raskin, and everyone has a go at me for pronouncing his name that way. Nico Raskin was great last night. Honestly, I thought he was really good for coming in, not really having a pre-season as of yet. I know he was away with the under-21s, and I'm sure that keeps his fitness to a certain level. But to come in and play the way he did last night, I think I said in a podcast a couple of months ago about Raskin, I think we viewed him when he came in as a kind of number 6, someone that would sit in front of the back 4 and he would kind of dictate things. And then I said, well, he actually looks like someone that could play as a number 8. You know, he has the ability to burst forward. He can carry the ball, which is something I didn't really know he was great at. But see now, to be honest, I just think he's all round a complete midfielder. He's kind of a throwback in a way. He's just someone that could do everything for you. And Ryan Jack said something very interesting in this press conference last night, that really those kind of midfield three need to be adaptable. They need to be able to play kind of any role that Michael Beale's looking for. And I think that's probably why Raskin's going to play most games, because he can fill in on either of the three roles. I just think he's got everything. You know, the ability to take the ball in the half turn. He can put a tackle in. He can drive the ball. He can find a split and pass. I think he played one last night where he was on the right-hand side and he clipped it over to Fashion Sakala. Yeah. It's one of those passes where it's just pure awareness. He's not actually really looked up to see where players are. He just understands where people are going to be in certain scenarios of a football game. So, yeah, I'm really, really impressed by him. I think this is an absolute snip from Rangers to get this boy for, I don't know, was it 1.2 million they ended up paying in January? Again, I always say this, it's really good business to get him and Todd Cantwell, and they're making a clear difference, and they've brought the level of the squad up. You compare Raskin to Ryan Jack, who's been fantastic for us over the years, and it's not a detriment to Ryan Jack, but it does look like another level. And that's always what you're wanting to strive for in a squad. You want to incrementally up the level, and it looks like we've got that with Raskin. I think he's going to be terrific for us. I keep reading everywhere online, people saying, oh, he's not going to be here for long, he's going to move on. Let's just enjoy him when he's here, eh? Because we all understand that Rangers are a selling club these days, but he's only been in the door 6 months. Let's enjoy him. Let's go and win trophies this season with him. And if he ends up moving on because he's made that much of an impact, that's good for both player and both clubs. So, yeah, look, I'm really enjoying watching them, Kyle. I think we all are in the stadium. That we've wanted a midfielder like this for a long time. Just someone that can do everything. We've always had like a Ryan Jack or a John Lundstrom or a Glenn Kamara, guys that are really good in a specific skill set, but just can't seem to adapt to certain positions or certain roles within the team. Raskin can do it all. And I think that's why he's going to be a really, really important player for Michael Beale.
Yeah, that's it exactly. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he fares this season. I think he has the potential to be an absolute superstar, to be honest with you. As you said, let's enjoy him for where he is. And it's a player that we'd obviously identified a wee while ago, and I'm glad he's finally at Rangers. But what made that even more impressive for me is that he has had a much shorter break than virtually everybody that was on that pitch last night in a blue jersey, and he looked like one of the fittest guys. He was still buzzing about, and as you said, it's that directness from midfield. We've been crying out for something like that, for a player like that for a while now, and I'm glad it seems that we finally filled that void. But Reiss, before we go on to talk about the Michael Beale presser, there's two final players that I want to talk about yesterday, and they're both Academy and B team graduates. The first is Bailey Reiss. Every time I watch this guy, I just cannot believe that he's 16. He's another guy that just looked so composed, and as Ross said, he needs to be adaptable in that midfield three, and he certainly looks like a guy that could fill that role. Do you see him being a bit more involved in this year in the future, or do you think he'll be developing the squad? And what do you think about Bailey Reiss in general?
I think he'll go between both. I was extremely surprised, but it's one of those things you know, but you always think surely not. Like the fact that he's still not turned 17 yet, like it's crazy. But I think Ross is probably the guy's biggest fan. I think every time he's got a sniff about the squad, Ross is singing his praises, and rightly so. He's been great. Watched him in it was one of the cup finals that was televised. I can't remember which one it was, if it was at Hampden or Ibrox, but he's certainly very, very good for his age. Head's constantly on a swivel. He doesn't seem like too physically underdeveloped for his age either, which is obviously a very good sign for 16. I'm very glad we got him in for Hamilton. He's obviously one who's come through a different club academy up to the age of about 15, but we got him in at a right time so that I think he'll be club homegrown, which, if I'm not mistaken, counts for something in the Champions League. So it definitely fills a quota, but this might be a bit premature, right? But do you not think there could be, or there's certainly potential for, a similar career trajectory between Bailey Reiss and Barry Ferguson? Think about it. Positioning, haircut, the ages came through it, how good he looks for his age. There's possibilities there.
Listen, he's no Stephen Davis. That's all I'm going to say about it. You know what I mean? But oh man,
that's a bold shout. It's a bold shout.
Did you two plan this about going? giving me the Barry Ferguson 2 barrels in this podcast? Is that what happened?
It's just something I think of every time I see him. I just look at him and go, it could be Barry Ferguson, you know?
Yeah. As long as he doesn't start doing punditry, we'll be fine. On you go, Ross. Tell us what you think about Bailey Reiss.
Well, I mean, I think we're hoping for someone to come through that makes an impact like Barry Ferguson, so I'd love it to be Bailey Reiss. I agree a lot with what Reiss has said there. I had the pleasure of being at Ibrox last season for the Glasgow Cup final. I don't think it was the one that was televised. I think it was the Youth Cup, Scottish Youth Cup that was televised. And he was unbelievable that night. I mean, I think Celtic took like a 3-0 lead at half-time, a 3-1 lead. The Rangers weren't playing well defensively. They were all over the place, but Bailey Reiss was so composed. I mean, this was 16. Again, he's playing above, really. He's playing the B team. Everyone else is like maybe 18, 19, 16. He's the number 6. He's demanding the ball at all times. And what I really loved about Bailey Reiss was the composure and possession is one thing, but his willingness to take a risk when it made sense was there as well. That's confidence in his ability, and he's only 16. And that's the bit that always surprised me. It was the same last night when he came on. Raskin was the one that was sitting a wee bit deeper. Bailey Reiss was playing on the left of the 3, and he didn't look out of place at all. And I think that is the best compliment you can ever pay a young player, is that they just don't look out of place as they go up the levels. That's always a great sign. And I think this boy's got it. Genuinely, I really do think he's got it. Whether he stays at Rangers long enough to make an impact in our first team, you never know, right? You know, when players get out to a certain level in Scotland and the Premier League come looking, it's very difficult to keep hold of them, but he has certainly got the kind of core fundamentals of being a top-level footballer. I can see it. I think it's maybe, again, Reiss went early. He said Barry Ferguson. Billy Gilmore's a really easy one. I think we all seen Billy Gilmore coming through and we thought, wow, this boy's something different. He's a level above everyone else. And that's the way I look at Bailey Reiss, genuinely. And if you compare Bailey Reiss to Zach Lovelace, there's been a lot of hype about Zach Lovelace in the last year from someone on this podcast. But I think that shows where Bailey Reiss is ranking in the hierarchy right now. Zach Lovelace is still playing for the B team. And look, he's doing well for the B team. He's doing really well. I can't criticise him at all. But Bailey Reiss has only been here for a year and he's already in amongst the first team. He's already getting opportunities to play there. He played last season at Livingston. And I think at the time, everyone was like, wow, that's early on. And now in this pre-season, he's getting more opportunities. I think he started the game in Germany, which is, I know it's a closed-door game. It doesn't really matter. But again, it's such a confidence booster for a young player like that. And I really do think if you sat Michael Beale down and you spoke about Bailey Reiss with him, I really do think he would praise him a lot. Yeah. You know, that this boy really does have what it takes. I think in terms of a technical point of view, the mentality is different. But just technically, when you watch him, I think he's got everything to make it, Kyle. And I'd love to see that at Rangers.
Well, again, that's it exactly on his in Beale's post-match, not the press conference, but the post-match interview to RTV. He named Bailey Reiss as he was glad that these guys could come on. So I mean, it's not the first time he's singled them out in a press conference. But look, guys, I promise you, there's one last player I want to talk about because he surprised me yesterday when he came on. And Reiss, I'll come to you on this one. It was Johnny Yfeko. Got to admit, seen him a couple of times for the B team squad. He has never been a guy that's particularly stood out, but he's always been competent. But he really, really impressed me yesterday, so much so that I was like, do we really need to be looking at a guy like Panzo? Do we need to be bringing him in? But it was his physicality, his defending. There was a couple of times where he stood up against, is it Isak? I think that's how you probably say it. He really, really stood up against him well. But it was his passing and it was his distribution as well. He took it in and he kept making this ball and he kept finding Bailey Reiss very quickly, just straight into the middle of the pitch. And I think guys like Raskin will absolutely thrive off of that pass. You caught a bit of the second half yesterday. What did you make of Johnny Yfeko?
Yeah, he looked very good. Very comfortable on the ball. I think for all, he stopped Isak getting through a few times, which kind of surprised me. Do you know that way? It's almost a one-on-one at the back where he's chasing him down. And Isak's not a slow player. You've seen him beat like more established, better players in the Premier League for stuff like that. And he just kind of seemed to marshal him pretty well all the way back into the box and make sure Butland had it pretty easily. He done well up against him, as we said, looked very comfortable on the ball, constantly just kind of looking for that ball out, which I think is what most teams look for in their centre-backs nowadays. And I think there will be more to come on why I don't think we need Jonathan Panzo or another centre-half for that matter. But Yfeko certainly looks decent for his age. It's only a half a football really for him, but there was definitely signs of there's potential there.
Yeah.
There's room for growth there, and possibly whether or not he makes it at Rangers, there's certainly talent in the boy to suggest he's going to have a career of it. Although he did get stood up for that ball in for the second goal. I think again, it's a friendly. You're playing against a guy who you're probably looking at, and I don't know the age of Johnny Yfeko, but he's probably looked at him and went, "Oh, I've seen you on TV." Balls in, and he scored a header. Like,
I think was it Alexander Isaac that stood him up as well?
Yeah,
I mean, 60 million. And we've seen that goal that Alexander Isaac scored at Goodison Park earlier this season, where he dribbled past everyone and hit the byline. You know, I wouldn't hold that against him too much. I know you're not saying that, but yeah, it does show the contrast. Yeah, and there will be plenty of people in the crowd last night that went, yeah, I didn't defend that. He's not got it, which is extremely harsh.
Listen,
it's funny. Like, my dad phoned me after the game. He's like, "Oh, did you see it?" Blah blah. And he's like, "Oh, what about that boy at the back?" And it usually takes something pretty significant for my dad to like single out players. He's usually just one of these guys that's during the winter he's saying to me, "Any of your pals no fancy coming here and that?" But he phoned me last night, and Yfeko was definitely somebody that stood out for him as well. And as Ross said, a £60 million player standing you up in what's probably a less fallible situation than ones we've seen him do to Premier League players down south, then there's absolutely there's no reason for grumbling from me.
That's it. As I said, let's not. Isak's been doing that for fun against much better defenders in the Premier League. I think there was a couple of goals that he scored last season from almost an identical position where he and it was a beautiful ball that he dinked in. But yeah, look, that's 52 minutes, and that's us just stop talking about the Newcastle game. So there we go. I'm going to move on to the press conference here. There was a couple of things that I was planning on talking about, but I think the thing I'll talk to you just now about, Ross, is one of my favourite subjects, Scott Wright. On the matter, obviously you were there yesterday, you heard Beale saying this. This summer, Scotty's had one or two inquiries. I think Scott's at an age where he wants to go and play regularly. I can't guarantee that, and he'll have to fight for his minutes here like everybody else. I'm not willing to guarantee anybody that they're going to play, and I think that he's at an age where he's good enough to play, and he probably feels that he spent a lot of time here trying to get into the team. So we're off tomorrow. It's a rest day, so it gives him a chance to go and speak to one or two people and make some decisions for himself. But there's nothing that's guaranteed on that one. And then fast forward to this morning, and he's getting interviewed by Sky Sports in Glasgow Airport. I can't remember the name of the Turkish team that he's going to off the top of my head, but that very much looks like that one's done and dusted if both sides have agreed terms.
I think it's Pendikspor, which I think they've maybe just been promoted to the top flight in Turkey. I think they might have some money behind them. I think that's what I was reading the other day. I think their stadium's 3,000 capacity, so that'll be a bit different for Scott Wright. I might be wrong on that. Someone can maybe let me know. That's just what I was reading on Twitter and things the other day. Yeah, Scott Wright, I think he gets more criticism than he deserves. I think we've always known with Scott Wright that he's probably never going to be a player that you rely on week in, week out. And I think we all knew that when we signed him. I don't think there was anyone ever looking at Scott Wright from Aberdeen as being the guy that's going to take Rangers to the next level. I think there's been certain situations where we've used him quite well. We've brought him into games where it's maybe stretched and he's been able to carry us up the park. Scored an important goal in the Scottish Cup final, started the Europa League final. You know, he's played in big games for us, but ultimately he's not good enough, right? And I quite like Scott Wright. I think he does genuinely have some sort of ability in there. I just don't think he's maybe at our level. But that is what it is. He's just not good enough for Rangers. And I always think that credit should be given to players that are maybe in a situation like this with Scott Wright. It's very easy for him to sit at Rangers I'm sure he's on a pretty decent contract and he could sit and enjoy the moment. I think he maybe has 2 years left on his deal, but he wants to go and play, you know, and he was talking in that interview about aspirations of playing for Scotland and things like that. That's what it's all about, being a footballer. You want to play at the highest level possible. And Michael Beale's been honest with him and told him that I can't guarantee you the minutes. And it's very similar conversation that I think Michael Beale had with Scott Arfield. There's a lot of people that wanted Scott Arfield to stay, but Arfield didn't want to stay and be a bit part player. He wanted to go and play football. And I always think that players that do that deserve credit. So, yeah, fair play to Scott Wright. He's played in a lot of big games for us, maybe not up to the level we need. And I think that shows we're progressing as a club, that really we don't really have space for these type of players anymore. So, look, wish him all the best. It's probably one of those moves where he goes, he plays for a year, and you'll probably see him back in the SPFL in a year after he's maybe made a wee bit of money over there. So, I never think these moves are, you know, for the long term. He'll be back here within a year or two. I'm telling you. So, yeah, good luck to him, and yeah, wish him all the best.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting one. I said that I think it's well known on here that I've never been fully convinced about Scott Wright, but he's always a kind of nearly player. Like, he looks like he has it in drips and drabs, but he just doesn't do it enough. I mean, obviously we've had a couple of big goals in Scottish Cup finals and stuff like that. So yeah, it's about time. But look, one of the last talking points of the pod, I'll come on to you, Reiss, here, and it was Michael Beale was asked yesterday about injury updates. And there was quite a few. Again, every time he seems to talk about injury updates, I'm always just expecting a bit something negative, but again, it's been another positive one. He says Leon King got the injury when we were away in Germany. It's not as bad as first feared, so we think he'll be back in 4 or 5 weeks. Back playing, that is, with training maybe 4 weeks or so, which, given that I think we all just assumed by the language that was coming out that it was a break or a fracture or something like that. We've had the best case scenario. We went to scan it immediately to see if there was a break. There wasn't. We've rescanned it, and it's the better news for us, so I'm delighted with that. Tom Lawrence returned to training the day we got back from Germany, so he trained with the team on Sunday. Tonight was too soon, and obviously the amount of time he's been out. Kamar trained from the mid part of being in Germany, and he looks in good shape, and Cyril was late arriving, so he's slightly behind everybody else, hence not involved tonight. Connor Goldson is still scheduled till the end of the month, so he'll make a start at the end of the season if all goes to plan. And young Adam Devine in the game in Germany on Friday just felt a slight problem with his knee, so he didn't want to take a risk. Dujon will return to full training as well. I believe he'll be in before the weekend or the start of the week next. What do you make of quite a positive injury news, especially regarding Leon King? That's massive, because I thought that he would be out for the whole season by the sounds of it.
Yeah, so did I. It was one of those, as I was reading the quotes, like if Ross and Craig were reporting for Ibrox, I was getting notifications through of the quotes, and do you know that way you're reading it and it says 45, and I'm expecting to say months, because even that would have been shorter than what we initially thought. And for it to be 45 weeks, I was looking at it going, I was like double taking it, going 45 weeks, what a result that's. Kind of brings into question, although for how long I'm assuming he's been around and the very, very short time gap between King's injury and the signing, it kind of brings the Balogun signing into question, doesn't it? It's a lot of supporters, I think, would have recognised the Balogun signing as, well, King's out, so it's a good stopgap. I don't think, for having thought about how quickly the two happened, Beale's not made that decision in like an hour and decided to do it. So I don't think that was the case, but it's certainly less needed and less likely that he'll feature as heavily, I think, especially if King's back in, say, 2 months' time, back to kind of full speed. But it's one of those seasons for Leon King where I think, pretty similar to Alex Lowry, it's make or break this season for him at Rangers. I think there's been a lot of talk of he needs a loan, the same way Lowry has, to guarantee himself minutes and development. So it'll be interesting to see how we go with Leon King this season. But certainly hugely positive for him not to be missing a season of football, and especially if he's going to be doing it for us, and we're going to need a big squad. So I have absolutely no qualms with the injury report. I think Tom Lawrence will need to be patient with coming back. He's been out for quite a while. Roof, I don't know, it's a bit of a ticking time bomb. I think I'm just conditioned to think that Roof's only a few days away from another injury, but Leon King, certainly massive news.
Yes, it's a good one. I said that I'm quite positive, but Doc Waller back in, and he's already making things better already. So there we go. That's my if you've got your This Is Ibrox bingo cards out, that's my Doc Waller. You can tick that off on it as well there. But Ross, I'll give you the final word in terms of the injuries. And look, some of these guys, Cyril Dessers, I'm actually looking forward to seeing him playing against Hamburg. It sounded like that. We might even see Tom Lawrence in there as well. And we might even see Kamal Roof, a totally different front three. On that, what have you make of the injury news? And secondly, do you think that we will see a different formation, a different front three in the game versus Hamburg at the weekend?
Well, I think it's funny because you go back a year ago and all the injury news every single week was negative. We were all dreading it.
Yeah.
The last couple of months after Michael Beale, for the most part, has been pretty positive. Even when people have picked up an injury, it seems that they're going to be back quicker than we thought. So that's really good. It's good to actually get some positive news regarding injuries. I have to be honest, when I was sitting listening to Michael Beale last night doing his press conference, lucky enough to cover the game for us last night, he mentioned Tom Lawrence potentially being available for the weekend, and my mind just went, it was like, like rainbows and everything like that, because I did not expect to hear that. Tom Lawrence has been out that long. I would expect him to be eased back in. I think he was saying that Tom Lawrence is basically desperate to play. He wants to be involved again. I'm sure he's not going to start a game, right? I'm sure he'll get maybe 25 minutes, 20 minutes at the end of one of these preseason games. But that's really, really positive. Tom Lawrence is someone that made a really big impact for us early on last season. It's so unfortunate he got that injury, because he was really starting to become one of the guys you looked upon week in, week out as making a difference. And I think, again, like I spoke about Raskin earlier, he was different to what we had. He was very that kind of, he's a number 10 or a forward player, but very different skill set to what we had. It was someone that was a bit raw, willing to take shots from distance, willing to carry the ball, willing to get involved physically. So I was buzzing to hear him back. The same feeling I got with Leon King as well, because I agree with a lot of what Reiss said. I think it's going to be very difficult for Leon King to break into this team, and obviously Leon Balogun coming in as cover for him. But of course, back in the training pitch within the next couple of months, trying to break in, right? And if he can't, then maybe January is when he goes out and he gets a loan. You don't want any young player losing a considerable amount of time to injuries when they're younger. You want them to get the majority of, as most game time as possible. So it's really good to hear Leon King back. Kemar Roof, like Reiss said, I'm very much the same opinion. I don't really know how to take that one. I think it's just, if I see him, great. Let's hope that he can make an impact this season. I'm not convinced. I don't think anyone's convinced by that. I think we all know how good a player Kemar Roof is. There's no point in me going into that, but we'll just have to wait and see. And as for the front three, I actually think Sima and Lammers will be in every front three in pre-season. I think he'll really want to get them as many minutes as possible going into these Champions League qualifiers. And then he's going to maybe throw a Dessers or Danilo and things and Sakala and that thing in there to supplement these guys. But I think he's looking at these two as being two of the three that are fit right now. So he wants them to be at peak when they go into these qualifiers. So I think the two of these guys will play. They'll get considerable minutes. But look, we have lots of options. We've not even mentioned about Yanis Hadji playing a wee bit deeper last night and really looking good in that role. So there's a lot of options in that squad for Rangers. Of course, they're going to have to move guys out like Glenn Kamara and things like that as well. So there's a lot more to come. But it's all positive right now, Kyle, and especially on the injury front, which is a very strange thing to say when it comes to Rangers.
Yeah, that's it. As I said, it's given how last season finished and how it started and well, in fact, just the whole bloody season, to be honest with you, it's nice to have something to be positive about. So we've got people coming back to the club and new signings. And yesterday, all things seem to be pointing to a good season. So hopefully that is the case. But look, that's us gone well over the hour. As you said, Ross, there's a million more things that we could have talked about in this pod, but I think we've given it a good go tonight. But just want to say thanks to both you guys. So thanks very much, Reiss, for joining us tonight.
Cheers, mate. Enjoyed it. Always a pleasure.
Fantastic. And thanks to yourself as well, Ross.
Yeah, pleasure, mate. I feel like I've spoken about Rangers far too much the last couple of days, so maybe take a wee break now for myself, and yeah, use the pre-season to recover. But yeah, ready to go for this season, and yeah, it's always a pleasure to be on. Thank you.
That's it. There's no such thing as talking about Rangers too much there, Ross. But look, just want to say thanks everybody for watching, viewing, listening. We will be back on Saturday, probably around about 6:30 thereabouts, with a wee post-match reaction to the Hamburg friendly. Hopefully we'll get to see some of the new guys. I'm really looking forward to seeing Cyril Dessers in particular. But just want to say thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you all soon.